Lately I've been proud, treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only real in my surroundings.
Tell them you mean business for episode 188 of the Smash Accept podcast. It's the Dynasty Lawyers back in action. Obviously, we're no stranger to the Dynasty Lawyers, the man, the myth, the legend, John Hampton. How you doing tonight?
Are you a victim of IR and your lineup is trash? Call up Smash. Get your questions answered at the Smash Patreon or call 444-4444.
Hit them up on the fours and new to the Smash Lawyers. Mung, what do you got going on tonight?
Has your Dynasty team been impacted by injuries? Don't delay. Follow and DM the Dynasty Lawyers at Smash Accept today on Twitter or Discord. We'll get you top value for your injured fantasy studs. No hassle, no fuss, just trade advice on getting the value you deserve to still contend for a title this season or in 2024.
I got to say, Mung, between
Beautiful.
last week's episode, talking about both quoting Lindsay Lohan and Obi-Wan Kenobi, to that commercial, you've been on fire, bro. That is awesome.
That's amazing.
I absolutely love it. So, guys, this week is crazy. Snoog and I just wrapped up an episode where we're talking about this is the time of year where, if I'm rebuilding, I'm looking at the contenders team, who doesn't belong? If that guy's rebuilding and he has Adam Thielen on his team, I'm going to make that offer. Or if that guy's, contending and he has Jackson Smith and Jigba, we're going to start playing around with some trades and try to work that. Tonight's episode's all about injuries, though, and we have so many of them from week 6. John, we're smooth sailing weeks 1 through 5,
yeah.
4-1, and then all of a sudden this happens, and it's like, what do we do? And I have so many people, their instant reaction is to trade their 2024 first, and that's something you and I have really changed around since 2023. Is these picks are so valuable. I put a tweet out there today. Out of the first 12 picks, 9 of them have gone up in value already. It's like trading that 2024 first. You got to hold on to it. You got to have it in the right area. So we're going to try to work you guys through some trades. Yeah. But how awesome has this 24 class been, to date? We're looking at things in college where I know you're grinding the tape. You're looking at things. Yeah. They're not disappointing.
No, for sure. As your lawyer, I would advise that you don't do that. Yeah, witnessing this 23 class just take off, all these picks have increased in value. We're seeing some crazy things like Sam Laporta is now being considered as I'm seeing top 3, top 5 dynasty tight end. Oh, there's a better tight end coming with Brock Bowers in 2024. All right. You like what you're seeing with CJ Stroud, who's now being considered a top 10 dynasty QB in some cases. Caleb Williams is definitely going to be a clear step above that. I think you flashed that Sam Laporta might even be considered dynasty tight end 1 now.
A lot of people.
Yeah. Not when Brock Bowers gets here. I'm telling you now, as long as he lands in a good situation. So you remember before the season started, Dad, we talked about 4 guys that were elite players: Caleb Williams, Drake May. We also talked about, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brock Bowers. All 4 of those guys have continued to solidify themselves as elite 24 assets. And we haven't even started talking about running backs. We're getting some props here in the show. I got my tie, and I'm looking probably arguably better than the other 2 guys. Miami Vice style for Dad.
It's true. I just broke out the blazer. That was actually my son that put on "We're Looking Spiffy." If you guys are normally just listen to us, make sure you guys go on YouTube this time and just look at us. We look great.
Yeah, come on, get in there, stream this baby.
Mung,
but yeah, this is looking good. This 24 class. Bottom line, as your lawyer, I can't advise you to start selling your 24 picks. Don't panic. Listen to the rest of the show, and we'll give you some actionable advice here.
Fantastic. The first guy we got to talk about, this is, been one of Mung's darlings here. It's a guy that I love. He's been, in the 2 games that he's finished, Anthony Richardson's been QB4 and QB2. He sustains a shoulder injury that, is now reported to a grade 3 AC joint sprain. So this is his 3rd game, obviously missed one with a concussion earlier. X-rays on the shoulder look negative, but we're going to be without Anthony Richardson for a while here. Mung, let's first start talking about, obviously the rest of the offense. Gardner Minshew came in. This is why they have him. He's a very capable backup. He keeps all the other wide receivers, going in that area. They get Jonathan Taylor back, which, if we're going to talk about lawyers, I think there should be a lawyer out there trying to sue the Colts organization of like, hey, they get Zach Moss coming out here balling out and they just pay Jonathan Taylor. But talk to me about the rest of the offense here, Mung, because when he stepped in, when Gardner Minshew stepped in, I mean, the offense didn't take a huge step back. I think the rest of the skill position players should be fine. Let's talk about that before we talk about Richardson's value.
Not even fine. I would actually say that this might be a bump up for Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, and Josh Downs, right? Fewer rushing attempts by Anthony Richardson will now be taken over by more passing attempts by Minshew. So that's good in terms of volume for Pittman and Downs. And remember, preseason, we talked about one of the reasons we were fading Jonathan Taylor a little bit, even if he was healthy to start the season, was because some of those goal line rushes were going to be vultured by Anthony Richardson. Now, when you have Minshew in there for the next few weeks, that's probably going to be more targets and receptions for the running backs and more actual goal line usage. So again, I think a net positive, at least in the short term, for these skill position players.
Yeah, I like that a lot. John, now we got to look at what are we going to do with Anthony Richardson?
Right.
I mean, let's say it looks like it's probably 3 to 4 weeks, so if you're able to go out there and buy what I've been advocating for everybody to do all off season, and you guys have talked about is get guys like Cousins, Geno, now Brock Purdy. You still get those guys for your late first. You can now get, Gardner Minshew is someone that if a rebuilding team has him, you can get him for a pair of thirds and fill in the gap. If you're contending right now and you just lost Anthony Richardson, what are you doing to try to fill that hole?
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge, right? Because a lot of contending teams also loved Anthony Richardson in his rookie year. They knew they were going to have that floor with the rushing. And, I'll just add to what Monk said. I mean, he is this big physical running QB. He has been knocked out of 3 out of the 5 games so far. It is his throwing shoulder. So, I think you could find some panicked contenders that can't wait another 4 or 5, who knows, maybe 6 games where the Colts are cautious with him. Maybe Minshew magic comes back and he's winning games while Richardson is out. We don't know. So I think you have to, as a contender, shop Richardson to the rebuilding and punting teams and just sell them on, look, Anthony Richardson is still viewed as the top QB out of this class. Yeah, he's going to miss games, but that didn't matter to you. You're trying to lower your max potential points, and so this helps you for the foreseeable future. What if you float him for someone like a CJ Stroud, who's looked pretty strong in year 1, and you're not really taking much of a hit in Dynasty because CJ Stroud has really met or exceeded all expectations for him too. And over the next 4 games, I was kind of glancing at the schedule. Looks okay. Like we could actually have some decent production there for CJ Stroud, and you still have a nice Dynasty QB1. I think that's an interesting target, right? As a contender that doesn't hurt yourself long term. But what do you think, Dad? What are some of the other QB targets you'd be willing to trade for?
Well, I'm going to play that from the other side because what I'm thinking in my head, you're always thinking contending. I'm like, how can I rebuild this thing? I mean, if I have Stroud, I'm going to give you Stroud in a second for Anthony Richardson. If I have Justin Fields, who, I've been saying everywhere, just keep him. But at this point, Anthony Richardson is locked up under contract. Anthony Richardson is going to be that franchise quarterback. We don't know about Justin Fields. So if you can flip Fields for Anthony Richardson, and then 2 ways, right? You get 0 points from Anthony Richardson for the next couple of ways, which puts you closer to Caleb Williams. And then you move that way. Same with Trevor Lawrence. I'm even considering, moving to that area for Anthony Richardson. Contending, there are a couple of guys that I'm just in love with right now. And obviously I talked about Brock Purdy. I don't think you're going to be able to buy him too much right now. But Matthew Stafford looked good this week. Matthew Stafford with Cooper Kupp back is someone that you could still buy for an early to mid-second. I think that's a decent play in there. Minshew's a stopgap. Mung, when you deal with Anthony Richardson, if someone's trying to buy him off you right now, I mean, where should we be looking if you're somewhere in the middle? We talked about John hit the contending, I hit the rebuilding. Let's say you're somewhere in the middle. How would you go about if you have Anthony Richardson on your team right now?
Yeah, I would consider, we talk about tearing down a lot, right? But maybe tearing up, because I think Richardson has already ascended in value for most. And after a down week by, say, someone like Lamar Jackson, right, where if all you're doing is box score watching, not accounting for all the terrible drops that his receivers had, Jackson should have had a phenomenal day against Pittsburgh. So maybe you can add a couple seconds onto Richardson and look to get Lamar Jackson, right? A similar prospect, more proven. And on the other hand, like you said, I like Stafford as a target. I think he's a veteran who's underrated right now. He looks sharp, and we know hopefully if Cooper Kupp is healthy for the rest of the season, we've seen before that Stafford has top 10 fantasy quarterback upside, right? That season where they went to the Super Bowl, he was phenomenal during the regular season as well. And someone who I think is underrated as well is Russell Wilson, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Broncos stink, but this year it's actually because of the defense, whereas the offense has been doing their part. Russell Wilson's actually the fantasy QB9 in points per game through 5 weeks. So I don't think you're going to need to even pay a first for him in most Superflex leagues. So Stafford and Wilson are two veterans who are cheaper that I would target. And again, sometimes you can tier up into that elite tier as well.
Yeah, and I think with the Lamar Jackson thing, I mean, a lot of people have them dead even or really close. So you might be able to, if you're contending, make that move.
I like that one.
Anthony Richardson is an elite level talent. John, we talked about this in the past. He was we know Bijan has kept his value at the 101.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the 23 class because I put a thread out there. Anthony Richardson is one where we want to talk about investing in, you did the rebuild, you did the 1 year punt. And these guys you look at Bijan Robinson has actually gained in value. Anthony Richardson now is worth 2 mid firsts, and he was the 102. Bryce Young has increased just a little bit. CJ Stroud is now, a lot of people have him as QB 7 or 8. He's
way
gone from the 105, 106 to 2 first.
Get him. Absolutely.
So this is that area where everyone right now, like I said, they want to be like, well, I'm just going to throw my 24 first out there. And it's like, take a real good look at your team, because I don't want to come out to the end of the year and get to an area where you just gave up your first and it's going to be the 104, because I object to that.
Yeah, you really have to be super careful with this. I did catch objection. We did
Overruled.
not advise that.
Hey, John, do you concur?
I do not concur. So just be careful with this, right? We talk about these cycles that we go through in the dynasty landscape. We were advising to actually buy rookie picks on a little bit of a dip after rookie fever died down after rookie drafts, and as people start shifting towards putting points on the board and needing those veterans back in their lineup, that was a good time to buy. So now that the point here is, if you've got 24 picks, look at these cycles. Now is not a good time to be selling them, panic selling to try and replace James Conner, Anthony Richardson, Justin Jefferson, HN. You really need to look at the cycle and know that these top picks that we're going to be continuing to talk about on the show will likely increase in value. They're not all going to hit, but many of them will have a major return that we just discussed. So just be careful with these trades that you're looking at right now, and know that these picks are guaranteed. I mean, the one true guarantee in Dynasty is those picks are going to gain value all the way through to the rookie drafts for next year. But again, even after the drafts into the following season, they could gain incremental value.
Yeah, and Mung, I mean, we talk about knowing when to use that first if you're going to use it. Right now, I feel like there is such in the dynasty landscape, so many stopgaps you can get for a second. You mentioned Russell Wilson. I think you can get Stafford in that area. Even in the running back position, you can get a Kyron Williams, at Joe Mixon, and Aaron Jones. In the wide receivers, you can get Jacoby Meyer, Adam Thielen. I mean, there's so many what I would call stopgaps in the area where we used to say, hey, I want to go invest in, Justin Jefferson went out, so I'm going to go invest in Chris Olave. I'm going to go buy up for someone else. And it's like, sometimes you can just get that stopgap of a guy that can fill in for 4 to 6 weeks and keep you relevant.
Yeah, if you want to go really gross, I mean, no one's going to be excited to buy Baker Mayfield or Joshua Dobbs, but they've been perfectly fine QB2s in fantasy. Dobbs was even a QB1 through the first 4 games. So I think those guys are perfectly fine to get you through the next few weeks.
Yeah, and I tried to buy Dobbs in multiple different scenarios, and people were wanting a 24-second. I'd pay a 25-second for him if I needed that stopgap. I'd rather give up that than really try to pay up, because until Kyler comes back and we don't have specific news, I mean, you're right. He's a top 15 quarterback, which is crazy to say, but
plus, I don't think it's crazy to think that Dobbs may play himself into a starting role in 2024 somewhere.
Yeah, it's possible for sure. Justin Jefferson, this one stung. I woke up today. I didn't even realize it. And then somebody messaged me, and a lot of these, these are my year one punts where I have Jefferson to build around and Richardson and A-Chain and all these guys. And I'm like, oh, what happened? So that's why we're trying to take care of you guys with the injury lawyers. But Jefferson suffered a hamstring injury in the second half of the game with the Chiefs. He's now on the IR. So the timetable isn't, it has to be at least 4 games. We're not quite sure how long it's going to be. So Justin Jefferson is someone that you built your team around. This is someone that I think a lot of people are messaging me and they're like, hey, should I tear down off of Justin Jefferson right now? And it's like, man, this is 4 weeks in the middle of the season. This is not time to hit the panic button. If this was week 14 and you wanted to tear down to AJ Brown, you wanted to tear down to, someone else that's going to put up similar type points, Justin Jefferson, this is your buy window for Justin Jefferson. If you can go out there and give up CeeDee Lamb plus to get Justin Jefferson, if you can give up Stephon Diggs in a first to that contender who's really worried about things. I mean, John, I know this is a type of wide receiver. We talk about Jerry Rice, we talk about Randy Moss, and Justin Jefferson, I think when it's all said and done, is going to be in that area. He's that special. Trading him now is something you kick yourself for missing 4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, he's a GOAT, no question. It's a really tough scenario because also of the state of the Minnesota Vikings, right? We know he's out for 4 weeks. They're definitely going to be cautious with him. Studying up on this, he could be out 6 weeks just on the injury alone. But again, the Vikings might actually be more motivated to tank at this point in the season. If you look at that overall situation for the team, they're not motivated to put Jefferson out there. And here's the other thing. Justin Jefferson doesn't have the long-term contract lined up. Does he really want to get back out there on a season that's effectively lost? So
good point.
There's a lot of things to consider here. I think we're in a rare scenario where the best wide receiver of this current generation is not going to be gaining value over the next 6 weeks, and it's worth taking a shot, especially for teams that had Justin Jefferson as a contender. Those are the folks that will start to panic when their centerpiece and it's going to be out for an extended period of time. And I think that there is a real scenario, and I hate to put this out there because I have Jefferson on some teams, that he just doesn't come back for the foreseeable future, right?
And I had a lot of people messaging me that today. They're like, I think he's done for the year, and it's like,
could be
okay,
could
but we don't panic in week 6.
That's right.
We go buy it there. I mean, Mung, I know you've been huge on AJ Brown, as have I. That would be someone that if you're going to tear off. But
there you go.
The interesting thing to me right now is I'm trying to fill in with Justin Jefferson, and one guy that I think absolutely skyrockets in value over these next 4 weeks or longer is Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison has flashed.
Yes, sir.
KJ Osborne, I think, is a nice low-key buy. But I think Jordan Addison now, in my 23 article that I was putting together there, is worth a mid-first right now. I think we could see a scenario here where he rises up in value and shows what he's able to do with Justin Jefferson off the field. And KJ Osborne has been very relevant and shown he's able to do that. TJ Hawkinson's in there. Mom, what's the biggest buy for you out of that is what's going on with the rest of the situation in Minnesota? Because we know they're going to throw at an elite level. Like Kirk Cousins is going to continue to chuck the ball. The defense is horrible. They're going to put up points. Who are we buying in on?
Yeah, there's 3 guys that I sent out some offers for this morning after all the news hit. One was KJ Osborne, because I think a lot of people are in on Jordan Addison. He's going to get hyped up a ton. And I don't know that you're going to be able to get him for pretty cheap right now. I would say you would have to pay a first plus a second minimum for Addison. Everyone knows that he's going to be elevated now with Jefferson out, but Osborne's been serviceable in the past, right? And he's still going to be playing a major, major role as the 1A, 1B, whatever you want to call it, to Jordan Addison. And I think that this offense is good enough to sustain that. But number 2, I'd be buying Garrett Wilson. And for 2 reasons. One, he had a down week against a god-awful Broncos defense, right? Everyone expected him to explode, and he just didn't. But I think one potential trickle-down effect of this Justin Jefferson injury, if the Vikings are out of contention, is maybe we do see a Kirk Cousins trade to the Jets. Even though they have Aaron Rodgers, that's not out of the question, right? Because it just makes sense that they still need to get to the playoffs if they hope to even get Rodgers back. And then finally, kind of a cascade effect too, if you lost Justin Jefferson, maybe tear down from him to Jalen Waddle plus a first. Because with Achane out, it's possible that the Dolphins do go back to a more pass-heavy offense as we saw last year. And Waddle's been underperforming since he came back from the concussion. He might be someone that you could buy low on right now.
Absolutely buy low. So if I'm rebuilding right now, I'm aggressively making moves for Justin Jefferson. If I got to add something on top of Jamar Chase, I'll do it for two reasons, because now I get the better wide receiver and I lose the points. If I have Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, those guys that, I'm not in contention, I am trying to aggressively go after that guy. John, you are notorious for those win now situations. So you have Justin Jefferson and I'm middle of the pack, right? And I'm deciding, I listen to the podcast. I'm like, you know what? I'm in the middle. I don't want to be there. I'm rebuilding. Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs for Justin Jefferson. You take your two studs. I'll get my guy for the future. Would you be willing to do that?
I definitely consider it. I would probably cry myself to sleep that night, but I would consider it. We play this game to win, and that's my style. And Justin Jefferson took you to a certain place, but you want to keep winning. I would not do it yet, though. I would honestly wait for a little bit more information on both what is going to happen with Jefferson's health, as well as what are the Vikings going to do for all the reasons I stated earlier. Before you move a centerpiece, you want absolute maximum knowledge, but those are the kinds of things I would consider. I'd also be shopping him everywhere and try to create basically a bidding war over Justin Jefferson's services to see, what's the best possible combination you could get for your team. Try to get it insulated if you can. Start at the top. You got Jamar Chase. Can you get a deal done there? Like you said, maybe a second gets tossed in, and then you're moving down to. I like the combo. That's a really creative idea that you just threw out there to get a couple of studs like that. So start looking at that. Start the bidding war, and maximize the return you can possibly get before you make that move.
So what if you're in an area right now, you have Jefferson and I offer you, let's say we're going to throw out there, give me Puka Nacua. Who else we got to get? We'll say Puka, DJ Moore in a first, we're going to have some of these scenarios where you're going to be able to buy in. And I think you're going to mitigate risk by getting rid of some of those guys. For me, the biggest thing, and Mung, we talked about it, is like these stop gaps. I mean, Adam Thielen is the wide receiver 10. You can buy him for a late second. Nico Collins is a wide receiver 11. He's a late first, early second. Hollywood Brown, wide receiver 12. You can still get him for an early second. Gabe Davis is wide receiver 14, mid-second, maybe late second. Jacoby Meyer, wide receiver 19. Christian Kirk, wide receiver 20. These are guys that can fill in that gap until you need Justin Jefferson back. And then Justin Jefferson, I talk about this like Mahomes, Jefferson, Bijan, those are ultimate trade pieces that if you need to get rid of them, you need to do the timing right and get maximum return. But there's a lot of guys that I think could fill in real nicely. Oh, that one's on Mung.
Sorry, I was still muted there. Yeah, I mean,
you have to remind to remain silent. As your lawyer, I would advise you not to say anything further. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you have to remember, too, that you can get a combination of these players, right? And again, I'm not sure the scenario that you threw out to John, right, Diggs and Tyreek Hill, I don't know if that gets done, because the odds are if they have those two guys, they're probably in contention, right, just based off of the first few weeks. But I do think you're looking for those undervalued guys, like you mentioned, Thielen, Marquise Brown, who I talked about plenty this offseason. And this is even without Kyler Murray. This is with Dobbs under center right now. So just imagine if Murray does come back at some point. Adam Thielen, right, the forgotten veteran. And even, like I said before, KJ Osborne, I'd be targeting some of these cheaper guys who don't carry the same name value, because even those underperforming guys like Olave and Garrett Wilson are still going to be pretty expensive. So it's possible to fill that hole for now without moving Justin Jefferson at all, except into your IR spot.
I like that a lot. Let's move on to another key injury here. Obviously, James Conner, someone that I always bring it up. It was that show you and I did, Mung, 2 years ago. It was like, go buy James Conner. And now James Conner sustained a knee injury against the Bengals, did not return. He was replaced by Emari Demercado, one of my absolute favorite dishes when I go out to eat. And this guy filled in well. I mean, 10 carries, 45 yards, and the touchdown. James Conner has been that rock solid guy for us. from day one, and I think this is an area where I think we start to see him down. John, I want to come to you with Amari DeMercado. Is this a guy that we should be investing in? Someone that in waivers, I got him in Smash One. I got him in almost every league because it was like, okay, there is no backup here. I need you to tell me the truth.
Yeah, you can't handle the truth.
Yes.
Yeah, I had to throw that. That's a nice reference for sure. Keep them coming. So I do like if he is on waivers. I mean, I would put in a pretty healthy fab there, right? And I think that he is a serviceable pickup. They do want to use him in the passing game. I watched him on the field. He was finding the hole. We saw some nice burst, and they're going to be playing from behind, so we expect that he's going to have some healthy targets as well. I think that Keontae Ingram does have a chance to get back, but again, neck injury on Ingram. That's not something you want to rush back from. I'd keep an eye on that and maybe double down and see if you can just pick up Ingram off waivers. He's most likely on waivers. But I will say this: there's a few other pickups, and you could probably throw a few more out there. If I could, and I'm a James Conner owner, and I'm trying to get through the next 4 games, I'd love to find a way to get someone like Roshan Johnson on my roster. That would be a fun move to make for not quite as big of a price, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think there's a lot of stopgaps. I mean, while we're on the position, we got to hit the Devin A-Chain. Obviously, is going. I mean, he's been CJ2K. He's been Barry Sanders level. Like honestly, these first couple of weeks, and Mung and I have been buying it. We had him everywhere in our rookie drafts. You were on to him. I don't know if you saw, I put a thing out there about Tajay Spears is the next.
Yeah, that's my boy.
I credited you on that for sure. But it looks like he's going to miss some serious time here too. So similar to what we were talking about, let's start thinking about some of them stopgaps. I mean, Raheem Mostert right now is the RB2. What late second for him? Kyron Williams is the RB5, and I know it ain't pretty, but the volume is legit. So he's getting it done. Zach Moss is the RB6. I know Jonathan Taylor's back, but he's worth a third. David Montgomery, RB8, worth a second. DeAndre Swift, I've seen people still getting him for an early second as RB9. Isaiah Pacheco, RB13. Robinson, 14. These are all guys that you can buy for a second-round pick. Don't go out there just throwing a first-round pick, trying to even Jerome Ford. I mean, these are guys, Mung, that we always talk about that next guy up, having those guys ready. DeMercado is that guy to jump in there, but there are a lot of cheap stopgaps at that running back position if you lost A-Chain.
Yeah, we talked about Jerome Ford a few weeks ago. I'm still buying him. A lot of people were disappointed when he had a really bad week against the Ravens with DTR under center. And it sounds like we may or may not get PJ Walker in week 6. So maybe another down week for the entire Browns offense. But the volume is going to be there for him. And I think that Watson, it doesn't sound like a long-term concern with him. So once he's back and the offense is functional again, I like Ford as an every week RB2. And then going to another AFC North guy who is super cheap right now, Justice Hill, right? He had a touchdown against the Steelers, but more importantly, he seems to be the passing down back there. And in PPR formats, I think he's a weekly flex, if not RB2, if he starts to take on a little bit more of the carries as well from Gus Edwards.
John, I mean, A-Chain from your college scouting, we had him back and forth RB3 to RB5 in this year's class. And, there was a lot of worry about his size. So I love what I've seen, right? And I have shares everywhere. And he's been the most electric running back in football. You can't argue that. Like better than anyone when he's touched the ball. I mean, he's just been an absolute, firecracker with the ball. Should we be concerned about his size? Because that was the issue all along. Is this an area where, because he went down, you consider trying to, the gap between him and Jahmyr Gibbs, a lot of people have him above Jahmyr Gibbs, value wise. And the gap between him and Bijan has gotten close to a point where it's like, you can add a little bit in there. If you had A-Chain and you're a contender, are you selling right now? What are you trying to get? And how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, I would consider it for a couple of reasons. Because his value has skyrocketed, you can absolutely capitalize on it. And I will just come back to your question on the scouting. I mean, there were people that were concerned about his size. We frankly weren't as concerned. If you look at the type of injury, it wasn't from like wear and tear and taking a big hit. It was his knee. But look, I do think that perception is still going to be out there some. And imagine that he comes back and gets hurt again. Then he starts getting this tag of being injury prone, like he can't stay on the field. Those scenarios are out there, and it could derail HN here a little bit. But look, I think that you kind of want to take advantage of some of those perceptions. We weren't really ever overly concerned about his size because he's doing things on the field that just nobody else can do. The speed is incredible. I do agree that Tajay, as a side point, is kind of HN light. But if I'm a contender, I got to consider trying to, let's use the term trade high, capitalize on the return. If I'm in a situation where he was my RB2 and I'm in a tough spot, you have to consider moving him. I mean, it's not a dumb thing to do to, buy him at the end of a rookie first and sell him for what, 2 firsts?
He's going for
maybe
2 firsts right now. I mean, I was talking with
Yeah.
Zoltan. He's moved him all the way up to his RB3, and I was like, I'm not at a point where I'm
I'm
going to
not
put
putting
him.
him
I'm
that
not
high
putting him
or
above
above
Brees
Gibbs.
Hall or
Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to put him pretty close to Gibbs right now, based off the way
Close.
he's played.
Mhm.
Mung, I'm going to look up some completed trades for him, but I want to talk real quick because I know he's been your guy. Like John's and I were, if you have him, you at least kick the tires and see what you have. If you don't, are you going out and buying him right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I moved him up to, you guys can find my updated Dynasty ranks on Fantrax. He's currently my RB9. So just behind Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne, just above Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor. So he's at a point where I think it's very interesting because he doesn't need 20 touches like some running backs. Excuse me. He doesn't need the volume per se. He doesn't need to hold up to a big workload. And I think Mike McDaniel is smart enough not to give him a huge workload, right? Because he wants him in those high leverage touches where he can break a long touchdown on 10 touches a game, 15 touches a game, something like that. So it doesn't really matter how involved Mostert's been to me. I don't think the MCL sprain or whatever he's dealing with is a factor in, or is because of his lack of size per se. Those aren't the kind of injuries we're worried about with him. I think that's an injury that would have happened to any running back if he got tackled awkwardly. We see the high ankle sprains crop up in similar mechanisms on those types of tackles. So again, I think people will say, look at the size concerns, but the type of injury that occurred has nothing really to do with his size.
I like that. I mean, that's where I'm at, is like, if I can move up to Bijan, if I can get myself a Christian McCaffrey, if I can get, even Travis Etienne in that kind of area, but we don't need to actively go out there and just kind of throw that out there and try to get trades. I mean, I think he's going to be absolutely fine. And the biggest thing for me is the rest of this offense. So Raheem Mostert instantly becomes a top 10 play again. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that's the stopgap. If you didn't have him before, go get him. And this is a time of year where we don't want to be in the middle. You want to be top 3, bottom 3. Look at the teams, because DeMercado, Mostert, some of these guys are going to be on teams that are 2 and 4. Those guys that are about to take that dive, go make an offer and try to get these kind of guys. Because I think, John, I think the wide receivers are going to be fine, but I think Mostert really gets a big kick here.
Mostert for sure. I agree. Top 10 play. And we already saw kind of what he's been able to do. I mean, he had the 4 touchdown game. So, I mean, as a contender, you could still buy him. I think you were saying a second rounder. I'd absolutely be comfortable, even maybe packaging a second and a third. If I think they're late, I'd consider that. The other thing I would do in either situation is go pick up Jeff Wilson, who's been on IR, maybe even stashed him in an IR slot or whatever, pick him up for a 4th or some other type of player, get him as a toss in. Because I think there is a scenario while HN is out where McDaniel kind of wants to keep Mostert fresh. Mostert's had some injuries, and it's possible that Jeff Wilson actually could become the goal line guy here, or it's just a committee and they kind of work Wilson back in, and he's actually putting up points in this high octane offense. So those are some other things to consider there.
I'm glad you said that because that was my biggest thing is like go out there and get Jeff Wilson for a third, late third as a contender.
Yeah.
I mean,
No
you want
brainer.
a piece of this offense. Mung talks about it all the time. It's like that next guy up. You want to make sure we're going out there and making that offer. And now with A-Chain there, I mean, do we see Tua's numbers take a spike here, Mung? Do we see it where instead of a two-headed running monster all the time, that there's going to have to be a little bit more passing?
I think Tyreek maybe too.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm buying Jalen Waddle wherever possible because some of the same ways that they used Achane near the goal line, right, on those misdirection type plays, we know that Waddle is a similarly explosive player who has that short area burst, and I think we could see some more manufactured touches for him as well.
I guess the other guy we would look at in that area, I mean, Salvin Ahmed's still someone that would possibly be in that area. I don't see a lot of value here, but you just throw him at the end of the roster. I want to talk, since we got the guys here, obviously one more key injury here, and that's Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce bangs up the ankle here a little bit. John, this is your guy. Travis Kelce's been someone that obviously has led you to multiple championships. I had a lot of offers for people like talking Kelce for Laporta, move into that area, or Kelce and Mark Andrews. I mean, is Travis Kelce that still that same guy? Or are we starting to see a little bit of an injury week one, and now we got another injury here? Or are we in an area where Travis Kelce might not be as reliable as he once was?
Yeah, I think that's got to be in the mind of every Travis Kelce owner. But I do think he's going to practice. I think he's still going to be okay. He's still clearly the far and away the number one target. And so I'm not selling him for too much of a discount on contending rosters. He still could be kind of, let's just use the term, league winner down the stretch in that offense. I mean, we're in week 6, right? They're going to be super careful with him right now. They're winning games. I think when you get around to the fantasy playoffs, Travis Kelce is still going to be the guy that you want, and is going to help you win a lot of playoff games, especially in these tight end premium leagues that we have. But come on, let's be real about it. Like at some point, even Travis Kelce, who's young enough to land Taylor Swift, he's still getting up there in age, right? So I think as your lawyer, I need to advise you start to consider some moves where you take advantage of it. If you're not a top 3 team and you're sitting there with Kelce, you may want to start kicking the tires. I do like see if you can get a Laporta and change, or a top 4 pick packaged in a deal where maybe you're getting Brock Bowers. Again, in these tight end premium leagues, it's really hard to replace Travis Kelce's points on a week-to-week basis. So you kind of have to do the math and convince yourself that you can get something in return for your roster that's going to keep you contending for the next couple of years. So that's kind of my legal advice I would give on that one.
I love that a lot, because a lot of people really want to have. I mean, Laporta's had an absolutely elite start that no one's
really has. Oh, it's amazing.
That no one's there. So I mean, he's what we wanted Kincaid to be.
Yeah,
that's where he wanted there, and I think you have to add at least a 24-second on top of Kincaid, if not a 25 first, to get to Sam Laporta. That's what kind of talk we have people going. So it's been crazy. Let's jump into some trades, because we have the Discords on and popping. We got a lot of guys submitting completed trades. I want to get some of your opinions here. First one was sent in from @NP Fleming. We have Travis Etienne and Josh Palmer, or Raheem Shaheed and 2 25 firsts. Which way are you going here, Monk? 12 team.
That's pretty fair for Etienne. Palmer doesn't factor in a ton into this trade, nor does Shaheed. So basically two 25 firsts for Etienne. So I think it's fair for both sides.
I like it. John, the next one's for you. This says a collapse for Caleb. And this has been the thing. And I want to talk about this a little bit, because everyone's doing it, right? Like we perfected the rebuild process here. Everybody wants that. Well, I got some major analysts were like, yo, Dad's trying to teach people to cheat. And that's not what it is. It's like,
come on now.
Hey, forget
as your
about
lawyer, we're not going to advise you to cheat.
What? This is my cousin Vinny. No, but like we have this scenario where you can collapse for Caleb. And I'm seeing, John, there are like 3 or 4 teams in most
Oh,
of my
yeah.
leagues that are all
Yes.
trying to go to that. So I want to
Yep.
spend a couple minutes here is like, how do we do this right when everyone's trying to do it? There are like when this first started, right? When we started teaching the rebuild process in our leagues, it was like 2 guys would do it. Maybe one perfects it, the other guy's trying it. Now I'm seeing in almost all my leagues such a disparity or discrepancy
Yes.
between the top and bottom. And
Big
I
time.
think there has to be some value taken out of that because it's like, if you're a contender, if there's 3 guys that are trying to get out of it, go start, picking off like the vultures would, start taking the meat off the bone, just go out there and get it because these guys are trying to give you value. I mean, I think
Mhm.
we got to zig when others are zagging. We got to figure out how to make this happen. And so many guys are like, how do I remove more points? And there's a certain point where you literally have handicapped your team so
You're doing
far.
more harm than good. Yeah.
Right,
There,
right. Like
there's
it's not
there's
just
a lot
get
of
rid of
mistakes that
everything.
could be made. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, number one, I mean, I'm usually in a contending situation. You have to take advantage of those teams, right? When there's maybe 3, 4 that are vying for the 101, you're making offers every other day. You're trying to like
Mhm.
clip off existing value that they have on their team as they're trying to lower their max potential points. So, I think that for sure I'd be doing. But on the other end, you can absolutely go too far. I think that the real key to do all of it is try to be as liquid as possible with as many
Mhm.
rookie assets, not just 24s. You're looking at 25s, and you basically just have to build your team around rookie picks, leaving very, very little value. You're looking for injured players on your team that will still have mid to long term value,
Mhm.
and you really have to convince yourself: are each of the moves that you're making adding more mid to long term value? Can this thing I'm trading for still accrue
Yeah.
value over time? Versus just trying to dump points off your team. You
Right.
got to be careful that some of the stuff you're trading for may not actually be gaining in value anymore, and you just get to the point where your team is so bad that you can't recover. And so
Right.
I have seen that happen. And the classic number one rule never to violate if you're in a smash league is definitely don't tank without your own first pick. I've actually
Right.
seen this now in smash leagues, and it drives me crazy where teams are so bad there's no and
There's no end in
they
sight.
don't even have their
Yeah.
own first. They're not getting that 101. They're gifting it to some other team, and that's kind of hard to watch.
And I think that the tricky part is, I mean, people look at the 2 rosters that I showed where it was like with the Thanos gifts, and it's like, hey, these teams, like this wasn't just let's get as bad as possible, as quick as possible.
That's
Everything
right.
we teach at
That's right.
Smash Accept is strategic. It's like if I was trading Jamar Chase, I'm getting Devonta Smith in 2 firsts because I still have a piece to go with that. Like I want to have a team
That's
in
right.
place because if you have Caleb Williams, but your best player on your roster is,
Yeah.
is like honestly, is Tank Dell. Okay, then you suck. It's going to take 5 years. Like we teach a 2-year process. And how bad is it? I have a lot of guys messaging me like, I should just unload this guy, unload that guy. I'm like, how bad is it if you get Marvin Harrison Jr.? How bad is it if you get Drake May? Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
we want Caleb Williams, but there's also a scenario where he doesn't come out because of the
Yeah.
money that's involved. So it's like the collapse for Caleb is awesome. We're all
Mm-hmm.
about it, but at the same time, don't do it to handicap your team. Like, don't crush it. Sorry, I had to get that in there.
Yeah. No,
I know
you're
that was a
absolutely right.
soapbox. This particular trade is Justin Fields, a 24 first, and Will Levis, or Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, Javonte Williams, and a third. This is sent in from Improve. I thought if this is now, this was a deal that made just before, but I think Justin Fields here is an absolute smash accept.
Run the whole thing by me. There was a lot of parts in that.
Justin Fields and a 24 first, or Daniel Jones, Dak Prescott, Javonte Williams, and a second.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm definitely solid on the Justin Fields and the 24 first side of that. I do think that some of the assets on the other side could potentially gain some value. Javonte apparently is starting to look healthy and could come back as early as this week. Sorry, Jaleel McLaughlin fans out there.
Dude, he
Javonte,
looked good.
he did
looked
though.
good.
He did look really good. And I didn't. I mean, as an undrafted running back, we didn't talk about him enough. I'll own that. But yeah, I think that side of the deal could gain a little bit of value. Daniel Jones, really bad time to be trading him. So if you're dumping those kind of assets and picking up Justin Fields with a 24 first insulation, I definitely like that side of the deal.
Got a couple trades on Twitter I wanted to talk about based off of our situation here, Mung. Is this one sent in from at the Dynasty Principal. CD Lamb. Yeah, you're going to the principal's office. You gotta be you gotta make sure your lawyer skills are fresh for that, you know. CD Lamb or Jordan Addison in a late 24 first. Twitter has this one almost dead even, and I'm blown away.
Wow.
Yeah, I would smash Addison in the first there. I think
Okay.
we're starting to see some of the issues crop up with the Cowboys offense with Kellen Moore gone. I think there were issues even prior to that blowout to the Niners. And I think the talent's still there for Lamb. I'm just not sure that the supporting cast is there. Who knows if McCarthy and Dak Prescott are here in a year. And personally, I think Addison's value is going to rise anyway over the next 3 to 4 weeks. So I would take that deal now.
You know what
John,
I will add to, like, the one thing that's starting that I just didn't realize on the 24 classes I've been studying it, the wide receiver class is loaded. I mean, there are so many guys coming out that I'm excited about now. Some of them have kind of snuck up on me, like Keon Coleman out of Florida State looks like a true alpha wide receiver that very few people were talking about because he transferred. Rome Odunze out of Washington. We've talked about Ibuka over at Ohio State, Xavier Worthy out of Texas. I could keep going. There are a ton of wide receivers. You're going to be able to get some of these guys in the late first, early second range, even in some cases. So in this deal, Jordan Addison and a mid first, where you're going to get one of these ballers. If you want to replace kind of 2 wide receivers with that CD Lamb asset, it is kind of worth considering. It's just amazing to me what's going on there in Dallas. Really bad time to try and trade Dak like we saw in the previous trade and CD Lamb right now. I'd kind of wait to see if they recover a little bit first.
If it's a late first, I'm buying CD Lamb for this. If it's mid, we'll start talking a little bit more, but I still have CD Lamb as a top 4 dynasty wide receiver. But your point with those firsts, now is this time where, you know, another trade sent in here from miserable Seahawk fan. You know, he tagged a bunch of us in it. He said Derrick Henry, DJ Chark, Alan Lazard, KJ Osborne, or a mid 24 first and mid 24 second. That's a smash. This is a time here where if you can get a first for a guy like Derrick Henry, you do it. If you package up, maybe this guy had Jefferson, he's throwing Osborne in there. You throw Thielen in there. This is a time of year, Mung, where, you know, people are trying to score points. If you're not in contention, you're trying to unload those points. You're trying to say, this is my last chance to get rid of Derrick Henry, as sad as that is. This is my last chance to move these certain players.
Yeah, the only caveat I'll say is, you know, I was low on Henry in the offseason, but if you're 5-0, if you're 4-1, and you have a strong team where you don't have to start Henry right now, I would consider buying low on him because the value really has shifted the other way on him, where if you can get him for just a single second at this point, there is a possibility that Tennessee moves him prior to the trade deadline. He ends up on a contender that may or may not suffer a running back injury over the next few weeks. So that's the only thing that you can potentially zig while others zag on Derrick Henry.
John, he's been your guy all along, but I mean, Tajay Spears has eaten into that every single week. My question is, and I put a big Spears thread out today. You know,
my man,
from Brittany to Tajay, I love the Spears. No, that's a little bit old school. That's not. You should object to that one. That's old school. But I need to know what you're willing to pay for Tajay Spears because, you know, you turned me on to him. I was buying him from 208 to 212. All my drafts, I have him everywhere. Is he worth an early second now? Is there an area where he's almost worth a first? He's looked electric. If Derrick Henry goes down, he could be an RB1 down the stretch.
Yeah, he really has looked so good. And remember, he's out-touched Derrick Henry. I think that one of the things that's kind of holding him back is just the overall Tennessee offense and just the presence of Derrick Henry. But do we really think that Derrick Henry is going to be on this Tennessee roster that much longer? So look ahead one step. Is Tajay Spears worth an early second? I think for sure he is. He looks explosive and he's healthy. I mean, the reason he dropped in drafts was the guy doesn't have an ACL. Okay. Seems to be playing fine without the ACL. He was a Matt Waldman favorite. Yeah. Who needs ACLs? I think that he's shown that he can get it done, and he's had his first touchdown of the year this past week. We broke a big one, so you can see that he's got the ceiling weeks. He's totally capable of hitting the big play, and so I'd be considering, if you know for sure your first is late and you want to send that for Tajay, maybe get something packaged in there. I'd consider that because of the future. I think it's really bright for this kid. I think the Tennessee team loves him. They're going to figure things out. That offense, if you look around, he is the playmaker there. Although I will say old Nuke looked pretty good this past week. They know that Tajay is going to be kind of that dynamic playmaker in the offense. And I think that if you look at the state of that team, they have every reason to kind of see what they have with this kid, get him worked in more and more in the offense. Whereas, Derrick Henry is just not going to be the long-term answer there in Tennessee.
I like it. I'm willing to give up a second plus, a pair of seconds. If I know,
Sure.
I know that this is going to be even a contender for 2 years, maybe a 25 first, and I'm starting to get there. I want to lead that into the next question for you, Mung. Dynasty Grill he's a great guy to follow on Twitter. Put out a poll: Devin A-Chain or a mid 24 and 25 first from the same team.
Man, that's tough because
if it's late, it's a smash, right? If it's random, it's a smash. If it's truly mid, that's where I think we start to get into an interesting situation, because how many running backs are worth 2 mid firsts? And to me, it's like Bijan.
Yeah, that's really tough, because I would say that's pretty much where I have A-Chan ranked. If it really is going to be a mid first plus a 2025 first, I think I would take the picks despite how high I am on him.
Yeah. I think it's a mid and a late. If it was that, I think that's dead on. But 2 mids feel like that's probably an overpay, and that's just like we talk about
2025,
with the process.
You can't really project that far out, but with the 2024 being fairly early, I would say this. I would lean the picks, but I would also take a good look at that team's roster, right? Make sure maybe he's 1-4 or something, but make sure he didn't just get Cooper Kupp back or something like that.
John, this one's going to blow your mind, but I got a Dynasty poll here, straight up. Dynasty Superflex. I love Brock Purdy. I mean, I love him. Kyler Murray or Brock Purdy, how close do you think this one is?
Closer than I'd like to admit. Lloyd,
it's 55, 40, 46
I had a feeling,
in favor of Brock Purdy. If you have Brock Purdy and you can kick the tires for Kyler Murray, or, kind of get into that scenario, like, man,
done.
I mean, Purdy's been phenomenal, but I think that's just an easy way to win in Dynasty for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that we've gotten a little bit carried away. I still don't have Brock Purdy in like my top 10 QBs in Dynasty, maybe top 12. If I could get Kyler Murray, I'd for sure do that. I mean, he really is. I mean, I have Purdy on quite a number of rosters, and sadly, I maybe even sold low. I thought I was doing really well to get a first for him. But yeah, he's definitely gained value. He's got a really nice floor apparently in that 49ers offense, but he does not have the ceiling and the upside of somebody like Kyler Murray. So if you can take advantage of some of the hype around Purdy and get a guy like that, I definitely consider doing it. I'd be shopping Purdy right now, frankly, based on that poll.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, we were buying him in the offseason, but right now there's a huge overreaction. And I think we do this every year.
Yeah, we do.
We're like, okay, this guy's playing really well. This is the kind of move that we need to make. So, the injury lawyers hooked you guys up. We talked about all the different, scenarios, all the different stopgaps, all the different ways to trade. Obviously, you can hit up any of us. So, and check out all of our content. But we'll start with you, Mung. Tell everybody where they can find you, what you're working on, and maybe one more guy to just go out there and under the radar, just try to pick up.
Yeah, you guys can find me at FFA_Mung. That's MENG. All of my Dynasty rankings, both one quarterback and Superflex, are over at fantraxhq.com. And I'll leave you with Jordan Mason, who I talked about a lot this offseason. Eli Mitchell just never seems to be able to stay healthy. Mason's had some health issues himself, but seems to be the number 2, at least when Mitchell's out. And even if McCaffrey were to miss time, knock on wood, I hope McCaffrey stays healthy. This is a fun 49ers team to watch. But if McCaffrey were to miss time, I do not believe that Mitchell would be able to handle the workload. I think we'd see a healthy dose of Jordan Mason at some point.
John, it was a blast putting the old attire back on, getting the injury lawyers going. Anything that you're working on and guys that you would be targeting right now?
Yeah, there's a few that I'll toss out there that I'd be targeting. I already mentioned Roshan Johnson. Khalil Herbert is going to miss some time, and I really like Roshan Johnson's talent, actually even a bit more than Herbert's. And I think that once he has a chance to show out a bit more, that he could increase his opportunity there in Chicago, and they are looking better as an offense. I think Kendre Miller is still a nice buy low because with the AK back, he's just, not kind of getting forgotten. I think he put up 90 total yards on the ground despite that, and he's getting healthier again. I like that as a pickup. As a wide receiver, I'll come back to something that Mung mentioned with the Colts offense and Gardner Minshew. I'd see if you can go get Josh Downs. We talked about him a lot during the offseason. See if you could get him for maybe a late second. I think we're going to see him get worked quite a bit in that slot position there for Indianapolis. So those are some nice moves. And then I think that Javonte Williams, just out of sight, out of mind, being hurt, coming back into a Denver offense that is going to be playing from behind. I think he is going to get dump offs galore. I do think Jaleel McLaughlin has kind of earned a spot in the team, and they may use P. Ryan, but Javonte will go back to being the 1A in that offense. And I'm just imagining all the receptions and targets he's going to get, and could still be the goal line guy there in Denver. So I think this is definitely looking good. So, again, that's my legal advice. As your lawyer, I definitely ask you to pay attention to all that we gave you here on the show tonight. It's been fun, Dad.
Hey, thanks again for tuning in, guys, and enjoy the process.